Kwame was a young mechanic in Kumasi who had built a small wooden garage at the corner of a dusty road. He was not rich, but everyone in the neighborhood respected him. He had a big heart, always ready to repair bicycles, motorbikes, or even cars for people who couldn't afford to pay. Many times he accepted vegetables, bread, or a simple thank you instead of money. His friends laughed at him, saying he would never grow rich like this, but Kwame didn't mind. He carried a promise in his heart, a promise he made to his late parents, that he would live with honesty, kindness, and never cheat anyone, no matter how tough life became. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, his hands already black with grease before the day even started. His clothes were old, his tools secondhand, but his determination was strong. Children passing by would wave and shout his name, Kwame the Helper, and he would smile, though deep inside he worried about how to pay rent for his small room or how to buy enough food. Still, he believed that one day his kindness would bring him something good. That day seemed ordinary, the sun burning hot above Kumasi, the air thick with dust and the smell of petrol. Kwame sat under a mango tree beside his garage, wiping sweat from his forehead, his hands aching from fixing a stubborn motorbike. Suddenly, the sound of a car engine coughing reached his ears. He turned and saw something he rarely saw so close to his workshop, a big, shiny, luxury SUV rolling slowly to a stop right in front of him. The car was sleek, the kind only wealthy people drove. Its tires crushed the dust as it halted, and the driver's door opened. Out stepped a tall, elegant woman dressed in fine clothes, her face carrying both beauty and frustration. She looked around, clearly annoyed by the breakdown and by the fact that her expensive vehicle had stopped in such a small, humble place. Kwame froze for a moment, his rag still in hand. He had fixed many broken machines before, but this time felt different. He had no idea that this simple breakdown was about to change his life forever. The elegant woman stepped out of the SUV, shielding her face from the blazing sun. Her name was Amina, and from the way she carried herself, it was clear she was not used to being stranded on dusty village roads. She sighed, looking around with frustration, but there was no other mechanic in sight. The only hope she had was Kwame's small wooden garage with its rusty tools and old tires stacked in the corner. She hesitated, doubting if such a humble place could fix her luxury car, but with no choice left, she walked toward him. Kwame rose from his stool, wiping his oily hands on a rag. "Good afternoon, madam. Can I help you?" he asked politely. Amina explained that her car had stopped suddenly, and she hadn't carried cash with her since she was just passing through. She looked worried, half expecting him to refuse or demand money up front. Most mechanics she had met in the city would never touch a car without payment first. But Kwame simply smiled. "Don't worry about money. Let me take a look. Sometimes what matters is helping, not counting coins." His words surprised her. She stared at him for a moment, unsure if she had heard correctly. "You mean you will check it for free?" she asked. Kwame nodded without hesitation. "Yes, you're stranded, and I cannot let you stay under this sun with no help." Amina blinked in disbelief. She had met many people in her life, but generosity without conditions was rare. She studied him, his simple clothes, his tired yet honest eyes, and felt something shift inside her. "All right," she said softly. "If you are willing, then please go ahead." Kwame picked up his tools and bent over the SUV's engine. Sweat rolled down his face, but his hands moved skillfully and calmly. Amina stood by, still stunned at how someone with so little could give so freely. For the first time in a long while, she felt humbled. She had no idea that this small act of kindness from a struggling mechanic was about to unlock a secret from her own past, one she never thought she would face again. Kwame leaned under the hood of the SUV, his hands moving carefully as he tightened bolts and checked the wiring. He was focused, yet he could not help but glance at Amina from time to time. There was something unusual about her, something he couldn't quite place. Her accent was soft but carried hints of familiarity, almost like the voices he remembered from his childhood. The way she spoke, the gentle pauses in her sentences, reminded him of someone he used to know. She stood a few steps away, watching him work. From time to time, she brushed back her hair or looked at the sky impatiently, but never with arrogance. Kwame noticed her kindness even in her silence. When a little boy passed by selling sachet water, Amina bought two and handed one to Kwame without a word. He accepted with a small smile, feeling a strange warmth in that simple gesture. As he leaned lower into the engine, his eyes caught a glimmer around her neck. A silver pendant hung from a delicate chain, shaped like a tiny star. His hands froze for a second. That design looked strangely familiar, as if it belonged to a memory buried deep in his past. He shook the thought away and continued his work, but his mind kept circling back to it. Amina occasionally asked if the repair was difficult, and Kwame reassured her gently. Their conversation stayed polite, light, yet there was a quiet connection forming, something unspoken but strong. He felt as though he had met her before, though he knew that couldn't be true. Finally, after a while, he closed the hood and wiped his greasy hands. It should run fine now, he said. Amina exhaled with relief, her eyes brightening. She reached out her hand, and Kwame hesitated before shaking it, noticing how soft her touch was. Thank you, she said sincerely, her voice carrying genuine gratitude. Not just for the repair, but for your kindness. Kwame nodded, watching as she stepped back into the SUV. As the engine roared to life and she drove away, he felt an emptiness he couldn't explain, like a bond had just begun, only to slip away too quickly. That evening, after a long day, Kwame sat at his small wooden table inside the garage, writing out a simple receipt for a customer. His lantern flickered in the dim light as the cool night breeze blew gently through the open doorway. Amina had returned to collect a copy of her payment record, and while waiting, she stood quietly near the entrance, her eyes lost in thought. Kwame didn't pay much attention at first. His head bent over the paper until a soft sound reached his ear. It was humming, a gentle tune, flowing softly from Amina's lips. Kwame's hand froze in the middle of writing. His heart jumped in shock as the melody struck deep inside him. It was not just any tune, it was a lullaby. A lullaby he had not heard in years, one his late mother used to sing when he was a child. He remembered lying beside his baby sister, listening to that very song as sleep carried them away. His mother's voice, warm and soothing, had been etched into his soul. And now, here it was again, sung by a stranger. Kwame looked up slowly, his chest tightening, his eyes fixed on Amina, who hummed unconsciously, unaware of the storm she had stirred in him. Every note of the lullaby was the same, every rise and fall of the tune exactly as he remembered. His mind raced back to the night their parents died, the day everything changed. His sister, still so little then, was taken away by relatives, and with her went the lullaby. He had carried only memories since then. His hand trembled as he put down the pen. Could this really be a coincidence? The way she hummed, the comfort in her voice. It was almost like hearing his sister again. He wanted to ask her, wanted to stop her and demand how she knew that song, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he simply stared, overwhelmed by emotions he could not name. For the first time in years, Kwame felt the past knocking at his door, whispering of something he was not yet ready to believe. That night, Kwame lay awake on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling of his small room. Sleep refused to come. The tune he had heard Amina humming played over and over in his mind like a ghostly echo. His chest felt heavy, and memories he had buried for years began to resurface. He shut his eyes, and suddenly he was no longer a grown man, but a little boy again, running barefoot with his baby sister clinging to his hand. He remembered her laughter, her round cheeks, and her tiny fingers that always clutched at his shirt. Her name had been Amina, too. The sound of it alone tightened his throat. After their parents died, everything had fallen apart. Relatives had argued, each pulling in different directions. In the chaos, he had been left with an uncle who could barely feed him, while his sister was taken away by others who moved her to another city. He had cried and begged not to be separated, but no one listened. That was the last day he saw her. Years passed, and the image of his sister grew blurry in his memory. Sometimes he doubted if he would even recognize her face now. But tonight, that familiar lullaby had ripped open old wounds. Could it really be possible that the elegant woman whose car he had repaired was his lost sister? Or was fate playing cruel tricks on his mind? He turned restless, whispering to himself. The details lined up strangely. The name, the voice, the pendant, and now the song. His heart wanted to believe it, but his mind warned him not to hope too quickly. Life had taught him that hope could be dangerous when it wasn't true. Still, the thought refused to leave. What if she really was his sister? What if destiny had chosen this moment to bring them back together? Kwame clutched the old photograph of himself as a child, the one picture that proved his sister had once been beside him. He fell asleep holding it close, praying silently that tomorrow would reveal the truth. A few days later, when the afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the dusty road, Kwame was surprised to see the same luxury SUV pull up to his small garage once again. His heart skipped a beat when Amina stepped out, this time smiling warmly instead of looking frustrated. In her hands, she carried a neatly packed basket filled with food items, bottled drinks, and even new clothes. These are just small gifts, she said softly, placing them on his workbench. You helped me when I had nothing on me. I cannot forget that. Kwame, touched by her gesture, bowed his head. Madam, you didn't need to do this. Your gratitude was already enough. But she insisted, her eyes shining with sincerity. They sat under the shade of the mango tree, sipping cold drinks. And for the first time, their conversation went beyond car repairs. Amina spoke of her life in the city, of the challenges she faced as a woman building her career, and of how much she missed the warmth of family. Kwame listened carefully, every word drawing him deeper into the mystery of who she was. When she mentioned losing her parents at a young age, Kwame felt a sharp pain in his chest. He carefully steered the conversation toward her childhood. Did you grow up here in Kumasi? He asked, pretending to be casual. She shook her head slowly. No, I was born here, but after my parents passed, I was taken away to live with relatives in another city. It was a hard time. I barely remember my brother. He was very young when we were separated. Kwame's breath caught, his hand tightening around his cup. Every detail matched the fragments of his own story. The way she described her relatives, the timing of their parents' death, even her faint memories of a little brother, it all aligned with the pieces of his childhood he carried like scars. He sat silently, his heart pounding, afraid to reveal too much too soon. But inside, a storm of emotions raged. Could it be that fate had finally brought his sister back to him? The sun had begun to sink lower in the sky, painting the streets of Kumasi with golden light as Kwame and Amina continued their conversation. They laughed softly at little memories of their childhoods, but there was still a quiet heaviness in Kwame's heart. He wanted to ask the question burning inside him, yet fear of disappointment held him back. Then, almost as if fate had heard his silence, Amina reached into her purse and pulled out a small, worn photograph. She held it gently, her eyes misty. I always carry this with me, she said softly. It's the only picture I have left of my childhood, me and my brother, before we were torn apart. She slid the photo across the table. Kwame's hand trembled as he picked it up. The world seemed to stop. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear anything else. Staring back at him was the exact same picture he kept hidden in a small wooden box at home. Himself as a little boy, grinning proudly with a baby girl sitting on his lap, his baby sister. His breath caught in his throat. He blinked rapidly as if his eyes were playing tricks on him, but the truth was undeniable. Every crease, every faded mark on the photo matched perfectly. This was not coincidence. This was proof. His entire body shook as he whispered, almost to himself, This is mine too. I have the same photo. Amina looked up sharply, her eyes widening in disbelief. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. Kwame's lips quivered, his emotions crashing like waves. Because that little boy in the photo is me. And you, he paused, tears welling in his eyes, you are my sister. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Amina's hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. The elegant woman who once seemed a stranger was suddenly his own flesh and blood. The truth had found them, and there was no turning away. Kwame could no longer hold back the storm inside him. His hand shook as he placed the photo back on the table, his voice breaking with every word. After Mama and Papa died, everything fell apart, he began, tears already filling his eyes. I was just a boy, and I begged them not to take you away, but the relatives wouldn't listen. They said they could only manage one of us, so they took you. I cried every night, every single night. I thought I had lost you forever. His chest rose and fell heavily as years of buried pain spilled out. Amina sat frozen, her body trembling as his words pierced her heart. All this time, she whispered, her face pale. I thought my brother was gone. They told me you were sent far away, that there was no way we would ever meet again. I carried this photo, but I never believed I would see you. Her voice cracked as tears began streaming down her cheeks. She covered her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably. Kwame's own tears blurred his vision, his rough hands wiping at his face uselessly. It's me, Amina, he choked out, his voice trembling with desperation. The boy you sang with, the one who held your hand at night when you were afraid. It's me. I never stopped looking for you in my heart. In that instant, Amina could no longer hold back. She rose from her seat and threw her arms around him, clinging to him as if she would never let go again. Kwame embraced her tightly, his grease-stained shirt soaking with her tears. They cried together, their bodies shaking, their hearts finally breaking free from years of loneliness. The garage that had once been filled with the smell of oil and dust now carried the sound of two souls reunited after a lifetime apart. Amina's voice was muffled against his shoulder. I found you again, brother. I found you. Kwame closed his eyes, holding her tighter. No, Amina, he whispered, his tears falling freely. Fate brought us back, and this time, nothing will take us apart again. The very next morning, Kwame and Amina decided to face the past together. With heavy hearts, they traveled to the old part of town where some of their distant relatives still lived. The journey was quiet, both of them lost in thought, holding on to the fragile hope that the truth would finally be revealed. When they arrived, an elderly aunt welcomed them with surprise, her wrinkled eyes widening as she recognized them. After some silence, Kwame spoke first, his voice steady but emotional. Auntie, we need to know why we were separated. Why was Amina taken away and I left behind? The old woman sighed deeply, her hands trembling as she set aside her walking stick. She looked at both of them with sadness that had lived in her eyes for years. It was poverty, she said softly. After your parents died, the family was broken. We argued, we fought. Nobody had enough to care for two children. Some relatives believed Amina, being younger, needed more care, so they took her to the city. Others thought Kwame, already a boy, could survive with your uncle here in Kumasi. We did what we thought was survival, but in truth, it tore you apart. Tears rolled down Amina's cheeks as she listened. Kwame clenched his fists, anger and sorrow mixing inside him. So it was disputes? Arguments over food and money that stole our childhood together? He asked, his voice breaking. The aunt nodded slowly, guilt heavy in her eyes. Yes, my children, we never realized how deeply it would hurt you. We thought you would forget with time, but we were wrong. We failed you both. For a long moment, neither Kwame nor Amina spoke. The pain of lost years pressed hard on their hearts, but at the same time, there was relief. The mystery was over, the silence broken. They finally understood how fate had scattered them apart. Amina reached for Kwame's hand, holding it tightly. We cannot change the past, she whispered, but now we know the truth, and we will never let anything separate us again. The days that followed were filled with both joy and reflection for Kwame and Amina. After years of emptiness, they finally had each other again. They spent long evenings talking, sharing memories of their parents, and imagining the kind of life they could have had if fate had not separated them. The pain of the past was still there, but now it was softened by the comfort of knowing they were no longer alone. One evening, sitting under the same mango tree beside Kwame's garage, Amina took his hand. Brother, she said gently, we lost so much time, but we have today and we have tomorrow. Let us build something that will keep Mama and Papa's memory alive. Kwame looked at her, his eyes shining with pride. You have the means and I have the skill. Together, we can make something that will serve more than just us. With Amina's support, they began planning a new beginning. The dream was bigger than just repairing cars. They decided to open a large garage where young apprentices could learn the trade for free. Alongside it, they envisioned a small community center where children could gather, read, and be cared for, something neither of them had after losing their parents. It would be a place built on kindness, honesty, and the values their parents had taught them. As word spread, neighbors came forward, offering to help in whatever way they could. Some brought building materials, others promised their time and labor. For the first time, Kwame's humble garage became a place of hope, not just for him but for everyone around. Standing together in the half-built structure one afternoon, Amina whispered, we were broken, but look how we are being repaired. Kwame smiled, tears threatening his eyes. Sometimes, he said softly, the act of fixing what is broken leads you to the piece of your life you've been missing. They embraced, knowing their story was no longer about loss but about renewal. From that day forward, Kwame and Amina promised that nothing, poverty, distance, or time, would ever come between them again.